At the Forefront Fintech Conversations. I'm Amanda Perucci, Head of Digital at Forefront.
And I'm Alex Benavides, an account executive and a member of the content team.
In celebration of Women's History Month, we are shining a light on talented women professionals in the fintech, financial services, and capital market space.
Over the past few weeks, we had the privilege of speaking with some of the top female voices in the industry who shared their perspectives, advice, and lessons learned throughout their careers.
By using our platform to highlight these individuals and their accomplishments, we hope to help pave the way forward to a more inclusive industry.
We hope you enjoyed this special edition of At the Forefront and Happy Women's History Month.
The first one would probably be Tara Mueller. She started as a mentor when I left working at banks and joined trading firms, and was very inspiring to me and quickly grew into a friend and still is a great friend to today. She was immediately refreshing and taught me how female colleagues support each other, can learn from each other, and can learn together, can help each other grow, are there to sympathize with, and just be each other's hype women. Another woman that I was fortunate to work with was Dawn Newsom. She is one of the strongest women in tech I've ever worked with. She showed me how to be her genuine self as a female in the tech world, own that you are both a mother and a career woman, and apologize to no one for the decisions that you make and the dimensions that you have as a person. Both of them just really demonstrated that other women are not your competition. You should be there to support each other, help each other, and work to rise together.
So my answer is probably going to reflect one of the issues in the industry, in the sense that I didn't get to have that many female leaders in my career path until quite recently. But I would say that more in terms of inspiration, it's when I came across through activity working with Linda, who's our Chief Product Officer. Here, seeing her in this position of power and just naturally expressing her skills and her competence at that level in a very natural way, I think this has been inspiring.
To answer your question, I haven't ever had one mentor, but what I have observed is that women who help lift other women up become sort of your team, and they are who you could use to share your challenges, your work challenges, your practice things with. And that happened about 10 years into my career. And it was many women, a couple I'm thinking of in particular, but a lot of a community.
I would have to go with my editor, Rebecca Natal. She is someone that is very unthreatened by anybody's pedigree. She really knows how to be in a room. You know what I mean? Like she's someone that's able to sort of walk into pretty much any space and really be herself, which I think is really important, not just for women in a space that's male dominated, but also for a journalist who is oftentimes the person in the room that has the most to learn, especially if they're young, which I certainly am. So yeah, I think she has been a great mentor in that way, in sort of leading by example, just the way that one should carry themselves in these situations.
I can honestly say I don't think I've actually ever had a female leader in the fintech space in particular. And I think that's just a function of the fact that to the point of this, there haven't been that many women. But on the flip side, what I will say is I've had some extraordinary women, especially I would say in the past decade of my life, when I think there was a shift and an openness to more people, women in particular, recognizing that the importance of community and the role it could play to professional women, especially as I became a mom, where there were just lots of conversations all in one between work advice, general career advice, industry specific things, as well as just how you're managing and dealing with all sorts of things in your personal life.
The woman who was the first and most impactful is Karen Hafling. One of the things that Karen taught me was, look, a lot of people in this business, not just in my role in marketing, but, in any kind of business decision maker role, a lot of people can say no. It's much easier to say no than it is to say yes. It's very risky and far less frequent, however, to find someone who's confident and open enough to say yes. Anyone can say no, and most people do a lot. But things never change if all you ever have the courage to say is no.
I've actually never had a boss who's a female, but I had a boss's boss who was a female, Christine Berthet, and she was both tough and approachable. And as starting out my career, realizing that that's a trajectory that was available, that was really amazing. Next up, I would say is Stephanie Dumont. I think what's impressive about Stephanie is that she's gone from, often being in the background supporting, the CEO and chief legal officer, to really being in the foreground and being a visible leader and acknowledged expert. And then the third person I would just have to say is my sister, Neeta Kulkarni. She is a doctor who runs her own practice, but she's also very outwardly focused and involved in women's healthcare rights. And so just to see somebody who not only is a professional success, but also a public success is pretty incredible.
My former colleague, Marnie Brent, who was somewhat of a trailblazer, someone who had worked in an industry in the 1980s when things were very different for women. And I had the pleasure of working with her and hearing those stories and how things have changed by the time we were actually on the same desk in the early 2000s.
I've been lucky enough to work with some incredible women who are presidents, vice presidents, and affiliate representatives. And one of them in particular that stands out to me is Christina Kowalski, who was the 2023 president of the Investment Traders Association of Philadelphia. She has done so much to grow that affiliate over the past couple of years, and especially during COVID and a post-COVID world, being able to keep people engaged and inspire growth and inspire people to come together is, something that stood out to me and something that I would like to apply in my own professional career and my personal life. Being able to get a group together and unite them under one common goal and one common denominator, whether it be the industry you work in or a goal you're trying to reach for your community. And I think that that's definitely something I want to take with me.
I never had the opportunity to work with a female mentor, but I was fortunate for 17 years to work with the former CFO and then president of Capus, Tim Hall. Tim was very focused on communication and collaboration, and he really could see the long-term vision while still focusing on the short-term goals. He notoriously would always talk about fighting the battles in order to win the war. He really helped me develop my leadership style, which is centered on fostering a supportive and inclusive environment where every voice is valued. I've always seen it as my job to remove obstacles so people could get their jobs done. With Tim, I learned to navigate the challenges with confidence. And, as we've all heard, it's a journey, not a destination. I really learned to enjoy the journey.
So very early in my career, a couple of years in, and she was incredible. She was supportive. She was detailed, but yet strategic, adaptable, flexible, and a really strong woman. And I think to have her as a role model so early on in my career, her name was Fiona Kelly as well, just to say that, was just really, really great to set a foundation of what you could do and what women could do as well, because actually within banks there weren't that many senior women at that time.
When I think of specific people in terms of mentorship, I do tend to look at like working mothers and people who have almost they've lived what I'm sort of going through, and just getting that guidance in terms of work-life balance and how to be, really impactful. Recently, we've made a hire on our side for, Lisa Sachs as president, and that's been very, very helpful to me, from a mentorship place.
We had this great female leader. Her name is Christina Karnowski. She's actually our CPO. right now at FactSet, and she was leading the business unit at the time. And she just had this wonderful way of managing us. She set a very clear vision and clear strategy for our group. So we knew our Northern Star and what we were marching towards, but she also gave us freedom and independence to lead and fulfill our functions the way we thought best. And it inspires a lot of my leadership today. So when I lead my team today, I try to really have open communication channels and make sure that there's a strong overarching strategy that people understand and contribute to, but at the same time, give them freedom and space to innovate.
Janine Hightower-Solito. Janine has been a COO, she's been Chief Strategy Officer, she's been a CEO, and she's always inspired me with her incredible strategic mindset and her relentless desire to learn. She's also a working mom and does an incredible job of balancing work with showing up for her kids. And when we were starting out together at ISC, neither of us were moms and kind of had that experience together. And it's been wonderful over the years to see each other's kids grow up and to see how her career has evolved.
Yeah, so for me, this was the first non-exec director role that I took on for Nordic Capital. And I think it was a really interesting point for me because I would never have put myself forward for that at that time. So, I'm very grateful for Nordic Capital for giving me the push. And it sort of taught me a few things. It gave me confidence. It taught me that, that sometimes that glass ceiling you put on yourself. And it allowed me to build different skills and just influence multiple companies rather than just being within one that you're working on.
So when I started in the industry, this protocol called Fix came along, and we were one of the first firms to introduce Fix IOIs. And so the role hadn't existed at our firm, and I sort of invented that role for myself. And that sort of beginning a job that didn't exist and sort of growing with it has been sort of the mantra of my career, in that the indirect connection to Fixed connectivity has been my direct role to grow. So I started in that role, and then it turned into orders in Fix, and I moved into other jobs that didn't exist in other firms, but that became sort of a standard role that was what the industry was looking for.
One accomplishment that I am so proud of is the work that I did in creating and launching the Contigo brand into the marketplace. I had the opportunity to lead the global team that developed the Contigo name, the brand, the visual identity, and the messaging that we needed for launch. We were doing this in a very compressed timeline of about 4.5 months. And so it was a crazy time for us, but it really helped to set the company up for the next 5 years of growth and success, and building a unique culture around the Contigo name.
Twice in my career, I significantly changed roles. So I changed from client facing, and the first change was into a leadership role in a business unit, and the second change was into our product marketing function here at FactSet. And that was super enriching because I started to see the world from their perspective. And it really, really kind of opened up a whole new world for me. Really having those different unique perspectives from different parts of the organization has helped me build my own skill set, has helped me better understand our industry, better understand our clients, and also to be a better leader.
One instance that comes to mind was, I believe it was in September this year, the London Stock Exchange, or LSEG as they go by, was doing an event in London at their offices in London. There were a lot of dudes there. And it was the first industry event that I had been to. And I remember went up to the roof after, and there's drinks and all these people, and I was kind of like, oh wow, there's a lot of people here. I don't really know how to insert myself. And I remember just thinking, I'm just going to talk to the women. And that sort of narrowed it down pretty quickly. I think what stood out to me is that it was one of these moments where it was very much finance and tech, and it was finance people learning about tech. And so I feel like in those instances, you feel very much, you realize how much everyone is learning. I feel like that was a big milestone of being like, okay, I can do this.
Something that I'm really proud of is the culture that we've continued to create at Surveyor, just continuing to facilitate that and making, it an environment where people, are treated humanely and, and there's collaboration and, the best idea wins, I think is something that I'm really proud of.
So I took over as CEO in January of 2020. And Cabas was a firm that had been very successful, but had been in a 15-year decline. In that year, I joined a CEO group, which introduced me to an operating system, not a software system, but a human-centric organizational system of accountability and communication. Nothing I had ever learned about in college. That led me to create a leadership group, which got the brain trust around the table to agree on where we should focus. So that's really, I think that joining that CEO group, I would say is the milestone that was instrumental in both my personal and professional growth.
When I joined Itivity under Rob's leadership as Chief Marketing Officer, we had a very good common understanding of the expectation he had for marketing. And that was really giving me the opportunity to express my skills and to deliver the value marketing can deliver at the right level. So not only to be appointed and have the official title and be recognized not only as, we could say as a female leader, but as a marketing experts joining the exec team, I think that was a bit of a difference because people would tend to have maybe a perception of what is naturally led by women as a support function. And here it was at the same time validating my curriculum and my expertise at the right level and as a function that can deliver strong value at par with the other departments.
Hidden Road recently went live with our FCM, initially supporting CME clearing. While in no way was this a milestone just of mine, I was so proud to be part of the team that accomplished this. We were able to demonstrate that having a more modern approach without losing sight of governance allows us to set a new standard and improve on the experience within an industry that had been forced to just deal with how things were. I think it really solidified the purpose of FinTech and showed why HRP is here.
So I think the accomplishment that I would highlight is really my career writing comment letters. I have written over 100 comment letters in my career. I think one of the comment letters that really comes out at me was the comment letter we wrote with respect to the market data infrastructure rule. And that was when I was chief policy officer at May Street. And we had previously visited the commission to talk about that rule and were challenged to really give numbers in our comment letter. And so we did an analysis of current market data charges, both from the SIP and the proprietary feeds, and came up with our own recommendations and tables worth of data. And that felt good because we had met the ask of the regulators.
A milestone or an achievement in my career was a consequence of my career. I would more than part of my career, if you will, and that was probably getting my PhD in economics. Being pushed along by fellow colleagues, particularly during my time at AQR Capital, and the brain power that was, happening in that firm really motivated me to finish my degree and push through my doctorate with the help and support of many of the people that I worked with. So that I would say that was a major milestone for me.
I think somewhere there was a shift where I realized people were looking to me to actually get advice. And I started to do just workshops, mentoring, more volunteering, being judges at business plan competitions. A lot of them actually were in the fintech space in particular, and doing this even globally. It was at that moment when I realized that I was the one on the podium, or I was the judge in the competition, and being able to provide advice and feedback. That's when I actually felt like I'd accomplished something.
Milestone that I was honored to drive was at Instanet for its 50th anniversary. Instead of making it exclusively egocentric about Instanet and its own history, we called the whole celebration FinTech at 50. And we looked at the 50 years of the evolution of electronic trading in the marketplace, and how the world changed, culturally, technologically, geopolitically, and we culminated the celebration with a conference where we looked at what might happen over the next 50 years. And it's amazing what happens when you bring people together to talk about a future that far out. They get really, really honest. Nobody had an axe to grind. They were all like, yeah, 50 years from now, we'll probably be doing this. That was an exciting moment and a great celebration to be part of.
I would say it's getting hired by STA and doing the job that I'm currently lucky enough to do now. I was hired just about a year ago to the day, and I'm currently Assistant Vice President and Director of Communications. And being able to hold that title at 24, which I was at the time, and seeing all of these people put their trust in me and want to work with me and guide me in so many helpful ways, I think that's been my most successful achievement. I've always been interested in the equities world. To have it be my career now, I don't want to say I was surprised, but I didn't really know where I would end up. And being at a place like STA has truly helped me realize so much of my potential, and being able to travel and connect with so many of our affiliates all around the country is something that I find personally very rewarding.
Something that I've noticed is there seems to be, and this is such a generalization, but there seems to be this baseline sort of boy knowledge. When you talk to a man and you say options contract, more often than not, they're like, yeah, I've read that Michael Lewis book. And when you talk to women, that is just much less the case. So I think it comes down to, especially when people are young and they don't yet have the sense of what they should be interested in and they shouldn't be interested in, it comes down to really nurturing those sort of nerdy hobbies, whether that's showing your son and your daughter The Big Short, or whether that's, encouraging a girl to read the financial section in a newspaper. I think a lot of times the interest is there, but there's sort of a shame that follows it, or kind of that just turns into a disregard. And then it turns into this feeling of, well, I could never understand that. And I think you kind of have to beat that sense.
In a recent, State of Women and Girls in STEM project coming from the National Girls Collaboration Project, they said that there are only 21% of female computer science graduates. Whereas if you look at the number of college graduates overall, they are 58% women. I think there's sort of two lessons from that. One is, there are smart women who are not computer science graduates who can, work productively in a fintech, in the development world. But I think the other one, and being a non-developer at a fintech, in my background, is the fact that it takes more than just developers to make a fintech succeed. I think one of the things that fintech leaders can really do is elevate those positions, and look for women candidates there as well.
Don't think about gender and diversity. Think about what are the competence that the person is bringing. Have a pragmatic approach to who you're bringing on board. And of course, be open-minded, but a pragmatic approach. It shouldn't be about what I look like or where I come from. It should be about what I can bring as value to the company. That said, if we stop the story as let's be neutral and just consider people for their competence, that would be not acknowledging that women in the space, people coming from different, I would say it can be schools or training, or people that would not be naturally included, that we don't see enough faces of. If we ignore that they have some specific hurdles, that would not be fair to the people. So I would say, be pragmatic, consider people for their competencies, but at the same time, be supportive.
I definitely want to acknowledge that I'm very lucky to be entering the professional workforce at a time when so many other women have paved the way before me and before other people in my position. Of course, there's still work to be done, especially in male-dominated industries like capital markets and fintech. One thing at STA that we value is recognizing and applying as many efforts as possible to the unique career needs of women in trading, tech, what have you. And our Women in Finance Committee, illustrates that it's great to see collaboration. And I think that that's extremely important, because at the end of the day, you don't have to do the same thing to encounter the same challenges or obstacles or situations that you might need just, a helping hand with. And I think being able to keep everybody engaged from all corners of the industry is really important for women to, have a sense of community.
Maybe within universities, even for people who have some interest, like we could market to them what could be future opportunities in fintech, because a lot of it still can be very creative, thought-provoking, strategic things that I think maybe certain women, maybe if they have a predisposition to thinking that, fintech is all just about running numbers on a regular basis. It's not at all. It just happens to be the backdrop to you solving some problem. There are so many interesting ways, I think, through entrepreneurship where there's all sorts of organizations where you can really help bring and advance capital markets, which is crucial and critical for emerging markets and going abroad and on different continents than just America. And so that might be an interesting way for women to at least learn about or feel as if they can still be in this sector that they might think at first is more only left brain versus the right brain. But I think in fintech, you really can make quite a difference. And there's lots of support for women or just in general.
The easiest one to point to is encouraging women to stay in the industry. And we see that with COVID, the tragedy of COVID, but the benefit of COVID in that it showed people that people can do their job anywhere. They don't have to physically be in a location. I hope that will sort of foster the opportunities that couples that want to grow a family are able to do so with more flexibility than was offered when I was raising my daughter. My hope is that firms really don't forget that this worked during COVID and it worked during a volatile market and people still did their jobs, and how you can balance those two where you're getting collaboration in the office but allowing people some flexibility to raise a family, I feel like will really bring a lot of help to women.
In my opinion, it's really a multifaceted approach. First, we need to get more women professionals into leadership positions in the fintech industry. Companies have to prioritize diversity and inclusion from the top down. Second, I think we need to create more mentorship programs, leadership development initiatives, and flexible work arrangements to support the advancement of women in fintech. I think overall, fostering diversity and inclusion in the fintech industry really requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders, companies, policymakers, and industry leaders. I believe women have really made great strides in leadership in corporate America, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. By prioritizing that diversity, equity, and inclusion, we'll create a more vibrant and innovative fintech ecosystem that benefits everyone.
I think conversations like this one are a great step in the right direction, and just encouraging, more dialogue around inclusivity, around bringing and promoting opportunities for women, just kind of bringing that to the front and center. I hope that is bringing, more women to the space where they can really see that there is opportunity there for them, there is a role for them. And I think fostering internal support structures within companies is really an important part of that. And I think when you kind of look at the data, finance has done a good job of, bringing more women into the fold, but where it's been less successful is continuing to promote them up into more senior management roles. And I think that having those types of network opportunities within companies to really foster that culture of success and to make sure that women do have visibility into how to grow their careers is really important.
All firms should wish to be more diverse because the research is there. But how to get there is the hard part, obviously. If a company is serious about driving more diversity, equity, and inclusion, they need to look across a series of operational philosophies and practices. Cultural change is what's required, and it needs to be actively managed. So there's no one silver bullet. It's not just about getting numbers in the door of underrepresented minorities or even underrepresented majorities in the case of women. It's more about creating an environment that's more open, that allows the participation and the opportunity to shape practices.
I honestly think that comes from a lot of mentoring. To be fair, I was mentored. I was very fortunate. I joke and say it all started on a Post-it, but it did. I remember a colleague of mine had said to me when I was not very knowledgeable about the bond market, she said, "Oh, well, let me show you. It's just a system of eighths." And she drew it out on a Post-it, and I still have that Post-it. But it's a small example, but being able to explain how things work to another female colleague or someone who's just coming into the business and not making it as much of a self-learning process, but more of an inclusive process, I think is really important. And that was probably what I valued the most was the mentoring, and then in turn being able to mentor people myself.
So I really believe it's not actually about gender, because it's about getting cognitive diversity, and so women are representative of they have similar traits actually, but there equally are men that have the same traits that get lost in the process, I think. And so you really need to set a culture that is open, that you have to recognize and make sure you're inclusive, but also I think we need to engender it much earlier. So I think these are things that we should be teaching people early and at school age, to put themselves out there, to be inclusive, to bring in others, rather than waiting to solve it later in the workplace.
So my entire career has been in, the financial industry, which is obviously, very heavily male dominated, and where I've felt included and is really, where diversity of thought has been, a pillar and a value of the organization and of the team. Sometimes I think as women, we can get a little bit nervous to give our opinion, especially if it's different from, the 5 other people in the room. But, to create that environment where you're encouraged to speak up, you're encouraged to, voice your opinion, I think that needs to continue within the space.
The first practice that we actually try to do here at Hidden Road is ensure we're interviewing women. If they aren't part of the interview pool, they're never going to be part of your employee pool. Another thing that's really important, and I got to experience, first at Virtu, and we aim to have here, is provide flexibility uniformly. Encourage and support putting family first and parental involvement for all. If you just make flexibility available for women, it actually leads to more inequality, because it reinforces the belief that the children and the home are solely the woman's.
Not all women are the same, right? And for many, for women, there's intersectionality with other underrepresented groups of professionals as well. So it's really important to embrace uniqueness here and diversity across the board, not just with gender, to truly create equal opportunities for everyone, and consequently women professionals as well. I think it has to start with clear commitment and intentionality to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? We have to be intentional about these things to make real change. So I think it's super important for companies to have DE&I councils and business resource groups that can really go deep into the networks of the company. And these types of networks can have really great impact on recruitment and how you retain and advance your talent, and your female talent, of course, as well.